What is up, Brad fans? First of all, thank you all for tuning in. And please do subscribe, follow, rate, comment, review, wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, tell a friend if you like what you're hearing. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram at 2BradForYou. Get in touch. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear. And with that, welcome to episode 2 of what I think I'm going to call 2 Brad for Politics. We're veering away from the natural sciences and into the political sciences. So once again, I was joined by my friends back in Canada for a panel discussion from everyday normal dudes who are interested in politics and want to get their opinions out there. It was a great chat. Always a good time chatting with these guys. We start talking about our home of Alberta, so a little inside baseball for people outside of Canada. But we start there, move to Canada and their response to the pandemic, and the sort of distribution of funds for people that are out of work. Which then led us to a discussion of course, what else? UBI, Universal Basic Income. And from there, we move on to the real juicy stuff, the American stuff. So we talked about, the election, the primaries, Biden as a candidate, but we also talked about the role of kind of alternative media sources. So, big podcasts like Joe Rogan, YouTube stuff, and it kind of went into a discussion on these platforms and their responsibility when talking about this kind of stuff, whether it's the pandemic or politics or something like that. So that was a nice little tidbit that I maybe wasn't expecting, but was really, really fun to talk about. So that's enough from me. Welcome to the show, and welcome to 2 Brad for Politics. All right, welcome back, Brad fans. If you tuned in to hear something about science, you're in for something else today, because we got the panel of regular ordinary dudes that are interested in politics, both Canadian and abroad. My good friend Steve up in Calgary. How you doing, Steve?
Good, Brad. Good to be here.
Yeah, and Coleman representing the north of the province of Alberta, over there in Edmonton.
It's truly God's country up here. Thank you for having me.
The frozen tundra that is northern Alberta. Like I said, this is the second episode of our dive into politics, because we're all political nerds, enjoy talking about this stuff. Scott couldn't be here today. We're down one member, but we're going to soldier on without him. And so let's start in Alberta, friends, because if you guys don't know my feelings on the current conservative government in Alberta, they're not great. I'm not a huge fan. That's obvious to anyone who knows me, and I think that we could argue policy or fiscal policy, kind of ideology, that kind of stuff, in a fact-based way, and disagree on how this government is positioning itself. However, I think that those arguments are kind of mute with the way that this government chooses to handle its business, we'll say. So I've compiled a list of events, situations, actions that to me paint a picture of, well, let's say corruption at its worst, incompetence at its best. And it all begins with, of course, election fraud. There was evidence during the leadership campaign that the current premier, Jason Kenney, ran a kamikaze candidate. And there's emails of this between the two campaigns outlining talking points, prearranged dates to drop out. There was also numerous campaign finance violations, and of course, the ongoing RCMP investigation into voter and identity fraud by the Kenney campaign. Oh yeah, and then they fired the elections commissioner who was investigating that and who levied fines and had, like I said, ongoing investigations into his campaign. Shall we move then to the war room? Need we say more? Well, despite it being an absolute colossal waste of money, 30 million a year for a crappy website, Twitter feed, and poorly reported blog posts, it also perpetrated a series of embarrassing moves. There was the attacks on the New York Times that needed to be redacted and apologized for. Let's not forget the logo fiasco. Uh, after, which was after election fraud, another in a series of moves that appear to show a pattern pointing to corruption, which was handing out useless jobs to donors, such as the War Room, and other friends that come with high price salaries. Let's remember the War Room was specifically set up to be unfoipable. It is immune to Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act requests. These are the requests through which journalists and the public can ask for documents and information about their government, which means no one can know how or where the 30 million a year is being spent. And judging by the look of the offices and the state of the content, it's going somewhere, but nowhere useful. Then there's all the panels and inquiries that, as I mentioned, are filled with government appointed folks, friends, acquaintances, donors who are tasked with seemingly coming up with information to support the government's agenda while leaving out anything that it doesn't. Look no further than the inquiry into foreign funded conspiracy against Alberta oil that was first proposed by the YouTuber Vivian Krause. It's been largely debunked by several credible journalists that I've seen. And it's headed by a donor and a former law firm colleague of the Justice Minister, Steve Allen, who was, of course, appointed by the minister. And this led famously to the email gaffe, where the minister's staff replied to journalist requests about his appointment with messages meant for the minister, requesting his input on which cover story to feed these journalists. This Mr. Allen later went on to award a $900,000 contract, sole source, of course, with no bidding process to a law firm at which his son is a partner. The government reports on safe consumption sites was also a highlight for me. There's another example of these reviews producing preconceived conclusions, with the report of the safety and the effectiveness of the sites failing to consult the police forces and actual crime statistics, both of which would support the continuation and the continued funding of these sites. Instead, they relied on surveys of public perception of crime in the area, and it doesn't take a statistician or data scientist to see how this could lead to overwhelmingly biased conclusions. For good measure, there's a fact that Kenny's brother once ran an unlicensed rehab camp for drug addicted youth in Kelowna that was shut down due to reports of abuse and mistreatment. So I don't really trust his judgment or compassion for how best to help vulnerable communities. Add in the activities of his youth campaigning against dying AIDS patients, which he refuses to address or apologize for, and it doesn't paint a nice picture about the Premier's thoughts on minority people in need. All of this is from a guy who complained about the decorum in the legislature during his election campaign, stating he would bring it back and bring back some politeness and decorum to the legislature, and then proceeded to hand out earplugs during opposition speeches regarding the government's imposed changes that would remove bargaining rights to the public sector workers after they limited debate on that bill. In another less than polite move, there was the fact that he made claims and accusations that the former government, the previous government, the NDP, lied about the state of the government finances, claiming that they were in worse shape than the NDP was letting on. And then, several weeks later, quietly released a report contradicting this claim, a report done by his own government contradicting this claim, showing that the expenses of the NDP were down by 30 million while 300 million, while revenue had stayed the same. And to be clear, he definitely would have seen the information in this report before he made these claims to journalists. Then let's just move on to the constant scapegoating of either Trudeau, the federal government, the rest of Canada, the public health officer of Canada, the Chinese, insinuating and then walking back that the public health officer of Canada is somehow unduly influenced by the Chinese. unleashing high-paid issues managers and communication staff to engage in social media arguments with constituents, doctors, journalists in and outside of Alberta, only to then defend his own health minister who berated a doctor in person for something he didn't like on social media. That thing, of course, being a meme that calls out another example in this pattern of activity pointing to self-dealing and corruption, whereby the minister and his wife own a business that brokers insurance plans to cover things not covered by public health care. And guess who has a say on what isn't and isn't covered? The minister, of course, advised by these government appointed panels. Then there's the stoking of separatism, calling journalists and citizens who question or oppose the ideology and direction of the government un-Albertan or un-Canadian, refusing arbitration rights and ripping up contracts unilaterally, which all of which highlights what I consider their disinterest in protecting workers, which we can also see in the handling of the meatpacking plant outbreaks, which of course contains yet another link to the government in that a relative of the education minister sits on the Cargill Board of Executives. So, to be fair, many of these activities, or let's say generously coincidences, have either been dismissed by ethics overseers, but there is a case to be made against those decisions. Or they've been brushed aside by the government, or, in fact, they're not technically illegal. However, like I said, it points to a pattern of arrogance and activity that doesn't inspire in me any confidence that this government gives really two shits about the province and the people, and it's run by people, one guy in particular, whose only substance in his lifelong political career has been conservative trickle down ideology, which is approved by the rich and powerful to maintain the rich and powerful. And for me, this is, even if you agree with this type of trickle down policy and ideology, which I don't. There's plenty of economists and case studies out there that show that it's not good for the people. Um, I think that this is a terrible way to implement this policy, and it's being done by terrible people. That's my thoughts, we'll say, on opinion on this government, and you can say that it's pretty biased, not very positive. So I'll throw it to you guys who are living in the province. This has got me all steamed up, and I don't even live there. So I'll throw it to you guys, and you can agree, disagree, call me a partisan hack if you will. But let's go to Coleman first in Edmonton. What are your thoughts on your current government? Fan, not a fan? Do you have a highlighted list of likes and or dislikes?
I wish I did have a highlighted list after that opening statement. Anything I say is going to sound foolish now. I think you bring up a lot of good points on that. I think right now it's kind of funny because you're seeing the same thing in Ontario. There's like two Jason Kenney governments right now. There's the one that comes out and announces very reasonable like health restrictions and stuff like that because of COVID-19, and you're like, oh, okay, that seems pretty reasonable. And then there's the one that is doing stuff in the background like this private health app and stuff like that, and just a pattern of really shitty behavior that you're like, this guy's a lunatic. Like, he shouldn't be in power at all. I think they're following a playbook that the Conservatives in Alberta have done for a very long time. It's get a majority, conduct your business in the back room, keep your donors wealthy, and just hope that oil prices go up. And this is kind of what they've been doing. Yeah, the Cargill plant thing was especially bad because that outbreak was clearly going to happen because there's no way to, like, just the conditions inside a packing plant, there's no way to keep everyone healthy. And the fact that they let that get that bad is borderline criminal, if not criminal already. Yeah. So my opinion of the UCP government is thumbs down. Two thumbs down.
Oh, two thumbs down.
Whoa.
Okay.
2 thumbs down. If I had a third, I'd put it in the middle.
Yeah. Let's just be clear. The Cargill plant is a meat packing plant in southern Alberta, I believe.
High River.
High River. And so they, there was worker concerns. The workers, apparently, there's documents and emails and stuff showing that the workers brought up concerns to management saying we don't have proper protection in order to work during the pandemic. The government said
They
they're
didn't just bring it up. Like they would say that they tested positive and they'd be asked to come back to work.
yeah. So yeah, there was lots of I'm just trying to make the point that it's not like these things blindsided anybody. It was out in the open that this was going to be like, as you alluded to, and they did send in. They said they did a review. The minister came in, and the government minister came in and said they did a safety review, which turns out was done by video conference. And there was, the workers obviously are pointing to holes in that process. They said it was fine, everything's fine, everyone should go back to work, don't worry about it. And then 2 days later had to close down the plant because it became one of the largest outbreaks in the country. But that's just to clear up that little point in case people who are maybe listening outside of Alberta are unaware of all of this stuff. Steve, what do you think?
Well, yeah, Brad, you had a great list tirade there. That was awesome. Coleman, you gave two thumbs down. How am I supposed to give, up that? I don't have more thumbs. I can't up the ante on either of you guys. So let's just say I think we're all going to pretty well safely agree on this one. I know that doesn't make for entertaining podcasts, like where I should be like the crossfire guy and like, well, what about the other side, guys? But no, I just can't do it with these guys. So and I think the I think we're tempted to say with governments, or at least I am tempted to say with governments, that they're all, relatively subpar. The governance itself is, obviously a really hard thing to do in a competent way, but it just seems like the people who end up in power across the board, any political party, end up being lackluster. Um, so we might be tempted to say, well, these guys are bad, sure, but think about the NDP government. We could make a list about the NDP government's first year and how they bungled certain files or didn't do things correctly. Or what about the previous PC party led by Alison Redford? Well, we could probably look at her record and we could say, oh, well, here's a bunch of stuff. I know we can look at her record and say, here's all the miscues, here's all the blunders, here's all the corruption and stuff like this. But I think it's actually dangerous to just kind of lump all of these parties in together and say they're all the same. They're all the same. That's just governance. It's just governance, baby. It's just some mild corruption, some dithering, some incompetence, blundering. But that's just government. I don't think that's what we should be saying about these guys. I think we should be saying, these guys are exceptional in their poorness. I think that they are, you have the list, Brad, and I don't have a lot to add to the list, but I think it's just important that, when we're having these conversations, that list that you highlighted is there to say that these guys are an exceptionally bad government amongst bad governments, for as far as the eye can see. And maybe that's just my own cynicism. Maybe, there's people out there who loved governments of the past, or that kind of thing. But um so, and to me, how they've comported themselves during the pandemic, like, it should be so easy. No, like governance in the pandemic, like people give you so much rope when
Mm-hmm.
when you're at the helm of this kind of a thing. You listen to your health expert. Everybody loves Dr. Dina Hinshaw. I find that she's pretty good. I don't know very much about what her position should be, but she seems to be doing a great job. So
That's the
you
public health officer of Alberta. Yeah.
that's right. So you listen to her. You have to make, some difficult decisions, but for the most part, we're just shutting stuff down. And, you keep us updated, you communicate clearly. And
And
that's
provide
how,
assistance to people that are out of work, which they
yeah, yeah.
arguably
And
have bungled as well. And then while scapegoating the federal government and letting the federal government pick up the tab for helping those people. Let's just
Well,
add that.
that's right. And so they have like nobody knew exactly what to do when this pandemic hit. No one was really prepared. But like governments all around the world did a fine job in mitigating a lot of risk, and some didn't do a very good job. But if you look at like different Canadian provincial governments, look at Doug Ford. Doug Ford went from zero to hero amongst his own uh, constituents. From what I can tell, I'm not an Ontario resident, but I think he's playing really well during pandemic times, just because he's clearly communicating. They shut down things. He's listening to the public health officers, and Ontario might be set up a little bit better for this because they're manufacturer and they can kind of turn that on in different ways, whereas Alberta's energy economy it only went down the drains even more, to the point where we were paying people to take our oil for a long time there, for a few weeks. So yeah, I think it should be pretty easy to manage the governance in a you know to come off like you're just trying to do the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people understand it's like we're not ready for this, but their intentions are there. They want to see us through this. So yeah, don't cut funding to healthcare at this time. That's probably a good idea to not do that. Don't have your minister of health be a I don't know. This guy's just a weirdo. Like his he's just an uncomposed person who you don't want in a place of leadership. And then it wasn't even the pandemic that got him all wired. It was his wife's conflict of interest
Mm-hmm.
situation that got him all that just sent him off. So
Let's
get
also add that he reached out to a number. He got a number of doctors' personal information
Mm.
and was was messaging them about some of these concerns, which was again one of these things that maybe it wasn't technically illegal, but it was like you're using government resources to go into private databases and get their home phone numbers or their cell phone numbers and then call them to talk about these things. It's just I get it's just
Well,
a
yeah
weird thing to do.
that's not the
yeah
only way he reached out. He literally went across the yard and yelled at his neighbor who was a doctor.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah
in a time
there
of social distancing, don't go yell at your neighbor because he criticizes your wife for giving you a tremendous conflict of interest over your position in government. That all seems pretty
yeah
reasonable.
yeah so the guy is he just has to go. Like as soon as that happened, it's like, okay, whoops, we hired the wrong guy in this position. I'll be accepting his resignation,
Well, and
right?
this is I guess the thing, like, just to break in on you here, Steve, a bit, but this is my the reason I came up with the list and the things that I did. I tried to avoid like policy decisions, because you can debate whether you should cut and where you should cut public services. That's fine. That's a debate you can have. But to me, it's this government, and it shows like the point when you're making about how other governments during a pandemic time can just like ride the wave and people will support them as long as they're coming across as like, look, we're trying to do the best they can. This government to me has from day one come out and said, we're doing this one way and one way only. We are not going to take anyone else's opinion. We're not going to look at experts, facts, whatever, data on some of these issues, and we're just going to do what we have set out to do. Fact and reality be damned. So continuing
Well,
to pour money into oil projects that aren't going to go anywhere, or making budgets that are based on pie in the sky projections about oil prices, uh, continuing to force through cuts during a pandemic. And I think that that's why during a pandemic, people are looking at them and being like, you refuse to even, acknowledge that this guy shouldn't be a minister. Like, it's just, no, we're just going to keep him. We're just going to
yeah,
keep him on board. And then there is, like, I don't know if how much you're on social media, and social media, Twitter, whatever. It's not the real world. It's a slice of what's going on. But the Medicine Hat News just published the salaries of the government
Mhm.
staff, which equals up to about $2.5 million. And for, again, a government that's talking about fiscal restraint and has painted doctors as being overpaid, teachers as being overpaid, doctors as abusing their billing codes, and this is why we have to, go after them. They have a high priced staff. They're not willing to make these cuts in their own backyard, and the staff are just on Twitter arguing with people in like really like unprofessional ways,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
dead
it's
but
off.
just like,
it's difficult. You have to pay a lot of people. You have to pay good people a lot of money to find someone to argue on Twitter. Like, you just can't find someone off the street that's good at arguing on Twitter. Like, you have to pay them $200,000 a year.
it's not like there's millions of people that do this every day for
Yeah.
free.
And you mentioned the war room. I think the war room's only purpose in Alberta is to fight the Medicine Hat News. It's like they are constantly,
And to give a failed candidate a job.
yeah, but they constantly, for some reason, it's like this newspaper in Medicine Hat. I can't remember the exact specifics, but there's a couple times that they've had direct conflicts with this war room over just editorials that they put out, which is the job of a newspaper. So we
Yeah.
have a $30 million war room that's its job is fighting with a newspaper in like the 6th largest city in Alberta.
Yeah. And
Does-
and so again, like I said, this to me is just like, it just reeks of, we don't give a shit what you think, and we won't give a shit what you think. We're just going to do what we want to do. We're not, it's not like, that relationship of public servant to, I'm here to serve the public. I'm here to tell you what what is going to happen here. And that's it. That's what irks me. That's what I feel like. But my next question then, I guess, to you guys is, how do you think this is playing in the conservative heavy province of Alberta? This is conservative heartland. This is the province that's had a conservative government for like what, 43 of the last 44 years, or something like this. Well, not
yeah.
40 of the last 44 years, something like this. Because I find it very difficult when I have, if you bring up a lot of these things that, again, like I said, they're not like, you can sit there and say, well, that's not technically illegal, or, they got rid of the ethics commissioner, but there's another office that handles that complaint or something. There's all of these things that you can kind of say, well, it's this or it's that, if you really want to defend this ideology. But I find that it's like it is getting harder and harder for those people to kind of be like, well, yeah, but they're supporting the oil industry, or yeah, well, but they're cutting the deficit, because none of that is happening. And that was even before the pandemic. None of the stated goals were being implemented. So Steve, we'll go to you first. What do you think? Like, how is this playing amongst the base, amongst the urban rural divide? Do you think that, like, if the election was held tomorrow, would they get another term?
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously I have no numbers, or I haven't seen any polls or anything like that. So it's really, you're going off feel when you
Mm-hmm.
try to answer that kind of question, right? Um, and so obviously there's a rural urban split, but there's also a Calgary Edmonton split, where I think Edmonton is more kind of eager to swing back to the NDP, whereas Calgary has kind of a more corporate feel to it, in terms of the oil and gas corporation center, like being a bit of a hub for that. Um, so it's, I mean, there's two things. I think anybody having a reasonable conversation about this, and I've talked to plenty of people who are, you know, maybe UCP voters, or potentially UCP voters, and they're really turned off by how this government is acting. So yeah, I think there's a lot of votes that are already going somewhere else. Um, but there's two things that go with that, right? Like, where are those votes going? Is this a UCP or NDP province at this point, or is there a third option? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we don't really know that as of this moment, and so the other thing is that the loyalty that the corporations feel towards this government for um, the tax cut, and just being so close, in their relationship, this is a very pro-industry, pro-large corporation government. So it's hard to say
As long
how
as you're an
much of
oil
that.
corporation, which is the majority of them in the province.
Yeah. And so we'll see how much of that like trickles down into the voting populace of Calgary. But Calgary's, I don't recall the numbers. Maybe you guys know better than me how many NDP seats, MLA seats won in Calgary, but it was not a marginal number when sorry, I mean in the last election when the NDP won. So I mean Calgary has shown the vote for progressive people in terms of Naheed Nenshi was considered a progressive mayor when he came on the scene. Um, and the NDP from the 2014 election, 2015, something like this. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, if Calgary goes away from the UCP, then it's over, right? Because that means Edmonton will have gone, and there's no chance that a government you can form a government without the urban centers of the province. So I don't know. Like the other question that'll be interesting to see is does the pandemic provide like a political smokescreen for the government in that how could we balance the budget? How could we achieve our goals? How could we were thrown this big curveball and all of a sudden we all forget that they were
Mm-hmm.
doing quite poorly at achieving their goals before there was any kind of shutdown of the economy. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I hope that a reasonable conversation can be had about this government's uh, track record in 2 years, 2 years time. So let's hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean oil prices and how oil rebounds in the next couple of years is gonna really affect that. Because if we come out of the pandemic and all of a sudden there's a big demand and prices go up, that could easily let everyone forget what the last 2 years were like. Coleman, you can jump in with thoughts on that. I thought Steve brought up an interesting point about where do you go, like where do these votes go. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, whether it's NDP or
I
the
do have
Alberta
thoughts.
Party. Well,
I do
then
have thoughts on
let's
that.
hear them.
I think there's it's like for the first time in Alberta there actually is a place for the votes to go. Because before, especially the NDP is kind of transformed into more of a center left party than it was before. Everyone like in Alberta talks about, oh, I'd vote Liberal if it wasn't called Liberal. I'd vote Alberta Party if they'd get their stuff together. It's like, no, you never do. But like the NDP is a legitimate option now to vote provincially.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the results of the last election, or the last two elections, really, the the UCP government didn't actually gain a ton of support over the combined Wild Rose and conservative numbers from the election before that the NDP won. Going off the top of my head, I think they gained like 4 or 5% of the popular vote, which really, when running against an incumbent government, isn't outrageous. The fact that they didn't take very much support from the NDP tells me that they actually have a shot in the next election. I think
Mm-hmm.
if you look at actually, I looked up Kenny's approval numbers right now, and this is from 2 weeks ago. I had time when Barb was talking to actually do some research for this, so I look very well prepared. Um, right now, it's what is this from? This is from Campaign Research Inc. 2 weeks ago on May 7th, I believe. And Jason Kenney's approval rating is at 44%, and his disapproval rating is at 48. And that's the least in Canada.
Yeah.
And I think right now, basically, his response to this is kind of making people angry on two fronts because he's restricting the freedoms of everyone by keeping them inside, and that's making the far right conservative supporters angry.
Mm-hmm. The freedom lovers.
Yeah, and he is spending like a drunken sailor and showing no actual results for it, which are making the center right side of conservatives angry. So he's really not making any of his supporters happy at this point. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're very interested in Keystone XL, I guess he's making them happy. But I think for the first time in a long time, yeah, there's you can vote NDP as a legitimate option in the next election.
Do you think that there's because I mean I remember the Alberta Party had some kind of momentum, at least in the media. People were talking about them a couple of years back, but then it kind of faded away. It never really amounted to anything. But do you think that there's a like is it a strategy for some of these smaller, like the Alberta Liberals and the Alberta Party or something like this, to kind of like even just like throw their support behind, the NDP or something like this, or join together? Because I mean, this is what the Conservatives have done a number of times, um, in Alberta and also federally. Is they've fractured into these different movements, Reform and
Yeah,
Conservative Party of Canada and Progressive Conservatives and this kind of thing, Wild Rose in Alberta, and then merge back together to kind of sweep back in. Like you said, they when you look at the support of the split Conservative parties before merging as the UCP, it's really not that much different. So I don't know, maybe there's a center left, or a left,
I, I don't
opportunity
think
for a coalition.
I don't think you really have to bring the left vote in Alberta together, because if you look at the results, like there's certain ridings that no one but the Conservative Party is going to win rurally, and then urban ridings, like most of the left vote goes to the NDP already. So I don't think
Mm-hmm.
you have to make a big effort to. First of all, in Alberta, we have to stop trying to make the Alberta Party happen. It's just not. We don't want the Alberta Party. It's like the Alberta the Alberta Party is Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett, for people that don't know, is a relatively popular Calgary Flames player, drafted 6 overall a few years ago. Scored
Fourth
4 goals,
overall.
4th overall,
Get it right.
even better. And he came in full potential, scored 4 goals in one game, but now it's like 4 years later, and it's just not happening. He's not going to be a first line player. I'm sorry. And the Alberta Party is Sam Bennett. I don't want to hear about the Alberta Party anymore. We're
So
done.
should they both just quit?
Yes. No. Don't talk about them.
Just don't talk about them.
Well, I think everyone is like, I wish, if only the Alberta Party was more popular, I'd vote for them. It's like the NDP moved pretty far right on their proposal, or like on their policies in government. I mean, they've come pretty close to what you want the the Alberta Party to be. So just
Mm-hmm.
vote NDP.
Well, and so then this is, I'll throw this last one out before we, maybe move on to other things, unless there's pressing things that you guys want to get to. And it is kind of, Steve, you kind of mentioned like, we could look at past governments and compare their records and stuff like this. And I think for the point that I was trying to make about the UCP, it's less of like, let's focus on what we have now and how they're doing. But I am, interested in, because like I said off the top, I disagree with the strategy, and the ideology of this UCP government, which is kind of, it looks like it's like this trickle down kind of economics, cut corporate taxes, cut taxes, and then cut spending. Um, and for, they also ran on this mantra, this conservative mantra of like, we're not picking winners and losers. We got to let the market decide, and all of this kind of stuff. And then came in and seemingly, seems to me like they heavily favor oil and gas. And obviously, this is a huge industry, the industry in Alberta. So you kind of have to. But I look at the NDP and I say, I saw a government that was saying, we are going to support our energy industry while also trying to diversify and find other ways to, like, at least start that conversation. Do you think that that's like just a no-go in Alberta at this point? Like, is UCP, like, is their mantra or their insistence on supporting oil, is that enough to win the province of Alberta? Or is there, again, room for, are people, maybe ready to have a discussion of, well, let's start let's start opening it up? Do they want to see, something like that, or do you want to see that? I know I'm asking you to speak for people that you don't know, but your
Or
thoughts.
care to know, Brad. No, just kidding, people. Come, reach out, get to know me. Love to get to know you all.
Don't do that.
So I guess the question, Brad, like, will people go for a little bit less kind of focus on oil and gas? Is that kind of basically your question?
I guess my question, and yeah, I'm terrible at actually doing questions. I kind of just say things that I'm thinking and then hope that you find a question in there. So that's my bad.
Mhm.
But I'm just wondering if, because it looks to me that, like I said, the UCP came in and said, like, we're all oil, that's it. The environment, it's not a concern. There's this conspiracy against us. Carbon taxes have to go. Yet, the oil industry itself said we're pro carbon tax and that things need to change. I'm just wondering if I see the writing on the wall and that this
Mhm.
industry is going down and it is not coming back. Does the province see that, or in order to win the province, do you still have to be driving around in a pickup truck with "I Heart Alberta Oil" stickers on the back?
Yeah, I think there's some middle ground there. I think it's a good point, but I think the NDP actually struck a pretty good middle ground in terms of
I
their
did too.
energy
Yeah,
policy. And so if they were to come back with that, like, people have the frame of reference, right? Okay, well, here's how things were under the NDP for 4 years. Here's how things were under the UCP for 4 years. The UCP was all about the rhetoric of helping this industry, but was it any better in the end? Did did fewer people get laid off? Did more companies succeed? I mean, look, we don't have all the answers to that question. The next 2 or 3 years are going to answer some of those questions, but it really looks like the answer to those questions are going to be no, that we did not have a healthier energy economy under the UCP, and because of the focus on that so much being their prime focus, it really hurt the overall economy too. That's just the way it seems like it's going. So, Brad, I agree with that, but I think you're never gonna take power in this province by saying what you just said, Brad, saying this is a dying industry and it's going away, so we better get ready for the transition. Even if that might be true, you still need to for sure pander to this industry to the point where it's like, okay, I mean, because for the realistic reason is that it's still paying the bills, right? um, and that's just we are not going to be able to transition to a tech sector. We're not going to be able to easily just transition to green energy and then become kind of like a central hub for all that. So, I mean, you have to strike a middle ground, is what I'm saying. You
mm-hmm.
can't just completely focus on it. I think people are might be over that kind of attitude, that kind of rhetoric 2 years from now. But you definitely can't just say, "Well, that's going away, so we've got to move on to the next thing."
Well, I mean, I think the reasonable thing that, like, everyone, even me, who is would be pushing for a transition to start right away and pretty aggressively, you have to understand that, yes, of course, you can't. It's like, you get the backlash from the other side, the really staunch conservative supporters that are always saying, well, we can't just turn off the taps, we can't just, it's like, of course not, no one's saying that. And that's what I thought the NDP did well, was they're like, well, no, we're not saying that, but we have to start preparing for something else. And I wonder if, going through a situation like a pandemic, and there was you alluded to the crazy drop in oil prices that was even before the pandemic, brought on by the market changing and the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia and stuff. I wonder if people's appetite is more for, hey, we got to start planning for some of these events, because we just saw what happens when we have no backup, we have no plan, we have no, So, Coleman, I'll give you the last thoughts on that, and then we can move to something else.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity at the last thoughts. I think it's going to be interesting in Calgary because, like, I think the big conservative strategy was just put your policies in place, hope oil prices rebound. Obviously, by their budget, they thought they would,
Mm-hmm.
and then run on a successful track record in the next election. It's going to be hard, even in Calgary, to campaign on economic success if oil's at $20 a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you're going to get your message across. It's certainly
Yeah,
not going to work in Edmonton at all.
Or will the message just continue to be, it's not our fault?
But now the
yeah,
It's the
NDP
federal
have a
government.
track. Yeah, but now the NDP have a track record of their own to run on. which is
Mm-hmm.
arguably better than the Conservatives of managing the economy to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to work in Edmonton. I think the Conservatives may have lost Edmonton forever, or not forever, but for a long time. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see this. I've been in this city for several months now, and I'm an expert on it and the people.
You got your finger on the pulse.
Oh yeah,
You're
it's
not even
certainly.
allowed to talk to people right now. This is the
Uh,
most human contact you've had for
He could
weeks,
lick
isn't
his
it?
finger, stick it out the window, and see which way the winds are
here's the
blowing, my
thing.
friend.
Here's the thing you guys don't know about Edmonton is there's an unspoken way that the people of this city communicate. A stare and a nod is all we need, and I know everything about my fellow Edmontonians. But anyway, so I think Calgary's where this next election is going to be won and lost. And if the Conservatives go in this trajectory is managing the economy, I think it's not impossible that they could lose a chunk of Calgary, especially like the inner city or something like that.
Up for
And then
grabs,
maybe
yeah.
not enough to lose the government, but maybe go in a minority situation or something like that. I think it's doable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll see how the rest of the pandemic and whatnot plays out, and then the oil prices afterwards. Because I mean, that's the thing is there's so many unknowns right now. So from here, let's transition quickly to the federal government, the one that the Conservatives right now seem to really like to scapegoat. Trudeau has seen a huge bump in his approval. He's one of these leaders that like seems like if you just try and manage the situation and be honest and open with people, you can ride out or you can rally people around during this
He
time.
he was born for this.
Yeah, the
I've
Yeah.
empathetic,
I've
caring
I've been
look.
harshly critical of Trudeau in the past, and
Rightfully so.
I'm still not a big fan or anything. But he was born for this situation.
Mm-hmm,
Gets to
mm-hmm,
be in front of a camera daily,
mm-hmm.
blowing in the wind.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
silver
he
fox beard he's
he
rocking now.
yeah, he does he does the camera well, so and
I
he's
think
getting his time.
I think other than that one attempt of the Liberals to get unlimited power for like 2 years and that one bill that they tried to sneak through, they've done a pretty good job overall.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mess, but
Yeah, other than that, like you say about Trudeau, this is him in his element. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we've learned anything from Justin Trudeau, there's not a lot there. There's just not a lot. He's got some like I thought in like when he's running the first time, everyone's like, this guy's an airhead. There's not much there. And I'm like, come on, like he can't be like that. You're obviously overstating it. And at this point, I'm like, well, they might be right.
It
But
seems
yeah,
that way.
at
And I
this
think
point, he's like listening to the people he should be listening to.
yeah.
And that's basically all we can ask of elected officials during these times. Because what the hell does he really know about pandemic response?
Right. Well, and I would say that I like I like the fact that he's not claiming to. You know, he's not the one standing up there trying to explain epidemiological data and things like this, which I saw
I
Jason
guarantee
Kenney get
you
a
he
lot of
cannot pronounce that word. I can't even pronounce it.
epidemiological. Well, I did study that for a while in my
yeah.
university days, so I should be
So
able to pronounce it by
brag
now.
right
Yeah, no big deal. But yeah, no, I mean, I've said this a number of times about Trudeau as well, is that it's like he makes a good, and I say this to people over here in Europe because he still has the, you know, compared to Trump and Boris Johnson in the UK, people look to, you know, places like New Zealand and Canada and say like, oh, well, look at these progressive leaders that like they say the right things, they do the right things, and I'm always like, yeah, but you don't know what it's like actually in Canada, you know, like you know what he's like running a government. And I think that he's the type of guy that, like you said, in these situations, he's in front of the camera, he can speak clearly, he listens to the right people, and he can deliver the message. He's a good figurehead in terms of a front that you want to have, you know, a message that you want your party to have or something like that. But as a leader of a government, the nuts and bolts of government, not that great. So,
So
but
we'll see. Like, I obviously agree with that, but I think the other thing, the financial aid that's been put together in short order in Canada, I think has been pretty reasonable in
mm-hmm,
how fast they were able to roll it out.
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
agreed.
And I mean, I'm only looking at it in terms of in relation to the United States, which had a, you know, they obviously have much bigger population, but they also have uh, egomaniacal type leader who's not he I think we're going to talk about him, but he called the checks back so they could have his signature on them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
delayed payment to people.
In need.
Yeah.
But they also
I mean,
they
I
have
don't
a
know if people
history
don't
of.
know.
is that a real story? I'm
I
sorry,
don't
I've
know.
read that.
Yeah,
but
that is true. But
is
if
that a
people don't
real
know,
story?
if you're listening, that is true. But if you're listening outside of Canada, it's like our setup to claim your they had was the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, which is
Yeah.
$2,000 every 2 weeks, is you just had to sign up for it,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
and like you didn't have to jump through any loopholes, and that was their kind of deals. Like you take the risk that people might abuse it, and there probably are people abusing it, but just to make sure the people that need the money get it right away,
Yeah.
which is what needed to happen.
Yeah. And then
And
the
sorry,
idea is that you find the cheaters afterwards, and it's the next year's taxes you'll
Yeah,
be able to
well,
sort that out then.
and it's not going to be that hard to find it. Like the tax return,
Yeah.
like it's all tracked online, and it's mostly is people that were double dipping, would be claiming both regular EI benefits and the CERB benefit.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the
But like,
CERB, people are calling that CERB.
yeah,
And I don't know. I thought it should be curb or
it definitely should be curb. I agree with you
sherb.
on that. There's no H.
Sherb.
You lost me. I disagree.
Herb?
I don't know.
It's
I don't think it's not Serb though.
No.
No, this is a bilingual country. It's actually Serb.
Serb.
Herb, huh?
Yeah. So, but in addition to that, now they have a different program, the wage subsidy rehire program, where
Mm-hmm.
they are offering to subsidize wages if companies rehire people, get them off CERB, get companies paying them still with largely government dollars. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I know one critique, and this is almost unavoidable. It's not a scam, or it's not fraudulent, I don't think. But people who could work or have been offered their job, but their job might be, bring them the same amount that they would make on Sherb. Uh, they why would you work, right? A lot, or at least a lot of people are asking that question. Why would I go to work if I could make basically the same amount on the CERB and not work, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, the problem is your benefits, because you get $2,000 every 2 weeks, or $1,000 a week, or whatever it is, or no, $2,000 a month.
It's
I forget what
$2,000
it
a
is.
month. Yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 a month.
2,000 a week. That would be. I'm gonna quit my job. Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
let's all get on this, babe.
exactly. But there's a policy in it. If you make, like, if you go back to your job and say you work part time as a server, or delivery driver, something like that, and you make $1,000 a month, you lose your CERB benefits in its entirety.
Mhm.
So really,
Yeah. So
why would you?
Yeah.
You can't afford to go back to work for $1,000 a month. Like no one can live off that.
Well, this is
So that's the one problem, and that's actually Andrew Scheer brought that up, and it was kind of misconstrued because he thought they made it seem like he was saying that people were avoiding work to stay on that benefit, but actually what he meant was like people are avoiding work because they can't afford to work if they lose the benefit if they're working part time,
Mhm.
and that's not it. And that's not a me saying that Andrew Scheer isn't wrong all the time about everything. There's just this one specific time that his words are actually twisted.
Yeah. The
But I mean, it's a legitimate question. So you use the example of earning $1,000 a month instead of $2,000 a month, and not being able to, obviously you can't live on $1,000 a month unless your
difficult to live
living
on
is
$2,000
already
a month.
Yeah.
completely subsidized. So 2,000, if you if you're making $2,000 a month at your job and you're offered your job back, there's going to be, I would say, a large amount of people, and I'm not in that situation, I can't speak for myself, but it's going to be a large amount of people who are just like, listen, I'd rather not work, and
Well,
I'd rather just pocket the same amount of money.
we don't. I mean, that's the concern, right? And I think it's a valid concern. But in other welfare programs, there's been case studies that you can look at where they find that people do want to work. Like no, like there's a small amount of people that actually just like sit at home and leech on, public benefits. It does exist. It does happen. But I think in this situation, what we're missing in our comments here is the safety aspect too. It's like maybe it's
Of
the
course.
equal. Maybe it's 2000. I either get it from the government or I go back to work. But if I'm working in a meat packing plant where no safety measures have been put in place and people around me have died from this disease, of course I'm going to stay home. So,
Yeah.
that's the other
Yeah,
thing.
any
Well,
public place.
Yeah.
That's definitely tips the balance for sure.
well, say you live at home with your partner whose immune system is compromised,
Mm-hmm.
and you go back to work for $2,000 a month. Like that
Well,
seems kind of irresponsible.
Yes,
yeah, you're
exactly.
taking the money.
So I think
And
it's
let's not pile on people that sit at home and collect government money and don't do any work. 'Cause that hits a little too close to home there, Bark.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to pile on. I'm just saying that this is a
I
situation. I
feel
don't think it's
personally
even a
attacked right now.
yeah. I don't think it's even a flaw in the system. I just think that we just need to be ready to accept that
Yeah.
that's going to happen, right?
Well, and that's kind of my point, is that it's like I think with all of these things, you like you made the point at the beginning that it got the money to the people that needed it as fast as possible. And even if there's people that are like getting it or they're double dipping or something, arguably you could say maybe that's going back into the economy as well. So, there you go. We'll claw it back later. We'll figure it out later. I think that's the thing, is like, and this is where you made the comparison to the US and their rollout and stuff. It's like they really have this attitude that if you give people public services or public, welfare, the welfare state or whatever, that they are going to become, fat on the teat of the government and never want to work and stuff. But I'm not sure that is borne out in most cases. I mean, look at how many people are just sick of staying home and they want to go out and work. So I don't know. I mean, we could look at, I'm sure we could find studies that will show both sides of that equation. But I'm always reluctant to be like, personally, I guess maybe it's naive, but I tend to trust people more that it's like most people
Well, I think the other
respect the
thing,
benefits and use them in the right way, and there's a small minority that will always, yes, be turds, but you can't let those people ruin it for everybody.
yeah, I think, and then the other thing is like there's going to be such a shortage of jobs that this is over. I was speaking from my personal experience. I'm on temporary layoff right now, so when I go back to work, like I am going to go back to work because like where else am I going to work?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's really not going to be a lot out there. Um, so I think a lot of people are just going to go back because like what's the alternative? Like you stay on EI for the next year or something like that. You're just in your house for 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah. So I think I don't know. I brought this up before as well, but I think the obvious solution is UBI. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
so talking about Andrew Yang, talking about the Yang gang.
You got
I'm
me
in the
onto the Yang
Yang
Speaks
gang.
podcast, and I must say I am enjoying it.
Good podcast, hey.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think that having that system in place leading up to a pandemic would have been great. I mean, it solves all the problems we just talked about,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's universal, so everyone's getting it. There's no way to cheat it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's some way to fraudulently create alternate identities that are sucking money. That's probably possible, but any system you have, you're gonna have to build a little bit of
It's probably
variance in
harder
there.
to do than one would think too, like to create a false
Probably,
identity to collect a UBI.
yeah.
No,
So
the real plan is to fake your own death and get some of that sweet life insurance money. That's much easier.
right, yeah. Fake your own death and fake your own birth, so you can just continue to be
Fake your own.
die, get insurance, then go on UBI.
I propose a spin-off podcast about planning a way to fake your own birth.
All right, let's do it. Well, first we need UBI. We need the freedom dividend. So it solves that problem. It solves the problem of just it being automatic. Like the Service Canada, though they did an admirable job of rolling this out, they're not set up for this kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
No one's set up to distribute this amount of money to this amount of people.
And
Like
track it, and yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
people were using the phone. Ugh.
Ugh.
People were using the phone to get this.
You mean
Oh,
they
the
weren't
phone.
they were using it like to talk into and not just
Yes.
type?
Yeah.
Ugh.
No, I had to use the phone for mine because actually I had an EI claim from last year that just restarted, but I had to be on hold for Service Canada. And you're on the phone, but you don't talk on it. I was on hold for like an hour and a half. It
Ugh.
was horrible. And they
Yeah.
play the same. They have like this little short clip of music that just plays really loud and then really soft and then really loud and then really soft. It's horrible.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. So, it's UBI, just the automaticity of it, and also the universality of it, and the fact that the money comes in, $1,000 a month, call it, or whatever it ends up being. Um, there is no there's no condition on it, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so whatever you're making, that money at your job, that money would be on top of that,
Mhm.
right? So there's no choice to make for people. People won't say, "Well, I could just not work for $1,000 a month." I mean, that's not really gonna get you what you want, right?
Mhm.
So it's you're just getting $1,000 raise every month, which is great, right? And it would help a lot of people in this situation right now.
It helped the people that
So,
need it the most, yeah.
Well, then you
well,
could
yeah,
save a lot of money from cutting other social programs too that you just don't need because you're paying the
yeah,
people that money already.
Right, exactly. Well, and this is there has been, again, case studies done on the best way to provide welfare. And again, the American model is always they're so afraid of if we give them this money, they're just going to spend it on booze and cigarettes because they're poor and that's what poor people do because they're gross. When in fact, if you and so then they make food stamps and all these other things, which complicates everything, creates more bureaucracy. I can only use these food stamps for certain items, but in the end, if you give people the money, they know how best to spend it. And the majority of people make responsible decisions with that money. And they're able to say, hey, this month I can cut back on a bit of my grocery bill, but I really need to make this car insurance payment so that I can get to work or my bus pass or whatever. And it gives them that flexibility. So, I mean, that's the thing. And I agree with you, Steve. The UBI thing, this is kind of like a trial. The whole world's kind of trying it out right now.
yeah. I
And
hope
so
I
we'll
hope
see.
it sticks, and yeah, I hope it sticks in certain places. And I think we're going through this right now. I don't know. This is a really strange time. I'm sure you guys agree. This is very bizarre
Mm.
to be going through this, but it could be. Not that I don't think it's going to be ongoing for years or anything, but the next thing could come up. There could be another pandemic. There's nothing that says
Or
that.
climate change disruptions, like
Sure, like
hurricanes
all
or
sorts.
whatever.
Yeah, so we need to be prepared for that going in. We need
Well,
to
and
be thinking about the future, right?
I think UBI is like the only reasonable answer I've heard to like job loss due to automation. And I think I said this exact same thing on the last time we recorded one of these, but like we're going to lose a lot of like low skill labor jobs in the next 10 years
Yeah.
to automation, and we're basically going to have this unemployment problem all the time. And if there's a better solution than universal basic income, I have not heard it yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said,
Agreed.
this is a practice run, a dry run. So then let's move to the neighbors to the south, the U.S. and the and
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about Calgary, my neighbor. Calgary, get your shit together.
we're gonna go to Lethbridge. We're gonna go to next. We're going
Oh,
live to Lethbridge, Alberta. No,
Lethbridge, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing everything great. We
yeah.
love you,
Shout out
Lethbridge.
to Lethbridge. No, we're getting because in the last episode or the last time we got together for one of these, it was during the primary, and Bernie looked like he was doing pretty good, but we were still on the fence of whether Biden was going to make his comeback, which we now know it looks like he did. So Steve, you were just mentioning Andrew Yang, and like I said, you got me onto the Yang Speaks podcast, which I'm quite enjoying. And the more I listen, the more I like that guy.
Yeah,
But let's say your thoughts on Biden now being the presumptive nominee, the situation in the states. I'll kind of
yeah,
let's give you free reign to take it where you want, and then we'll jump in.
cool. Well, where to even begin with that circus down there? My goodness. Yeah, so Joe Biden, the presumptive nominee, and people are, not happy about this pick, or at least, you know, we
But
should
he
all
did win,
obviously,
so people voted
yeah,
for him.
so I'm not happy about it. I'm just
Yeah,
some guy who doesn't even get to vote
yeah,
in this election and all that, but I'm not happy about it, and a lot of people are unhappy about it. I think he is I think it's an unpopular pick amongst a large group of people.
hmm
That's the thing with the United States, though. It's a country of 300 plus million, 350 million people. So you have these big pockets of people. I'm sure he's popular amongst a lot of people. And then there's also like the targeting of where you want to focus in terms of their electoral college. What's the
right.
swing states? Is he popular in the swing states? So it might not matter if he's popular in California or New York
hmm
or these blue states. But if he's popular in the states that could go either way, the swing states, then the Wisconsins, a lot of the center
Michigan,
states,
Florida,
Michigan, yeah. So
Pennsylvania.
so and I guess his numbers are strong in those places, and people, he's a recognizable guy and all this. I mean, the thing is you bring a guy in who is has a credible rape allegation against him.
Is it credible?
uh yeah, of course it is. Well, I don't know, maybe you have information I don't, but from what I've heard, it's a credible rape allegation. That doesn't mean that he for sure did it. That doesn't mean that he's proven guilty in the court of law, but it means that he has an accuser whose story from the early 90s has been corroborated by multiple people at that time,
hmm
right?
I have also
So,
heard, again, and I'll be honest that I haven't followed that too closely, but I've also heard that
well,
journalists have tried to report on it. The story has changed. There's, documents that could be, that Biden has said, like, let's look at those to see if she made the report. The story changed. I don't know. So
Yeah,
these things are always going to be a fucking shit show to get to the bottom of.
we're
totally,
also
but
running. We're in a period. We got a candidate with one sex crime allegation against him, running against one that has like 45
yeah, no,
allegations.
I completely agree with that. But I mean, the fact that they're running this guy, so you have Trump, who has this, he's the Teflon pan of rape. It just slides right off him. Um, and he's also completely senile, but
hmm
he seems to be on speed, and
Makes zero
he
sense a lot of times when he talks.
makes zero sense, but he can ramble, right? So
He's also
uh
the Teflon pan of memories. They just slide right off of him because he's senile.
yeah,
Go
With the
on.
yeah,
words.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but then you bring in Joe Biden, who has, like, I'm gonna just continue to call it a credible rape allegation until I see, till it's proven otherwise, and also a seems to be suffering from memory problems, perhaps dementia at his old age as well. I like, so why is this a good candidate to run up against Trump? I have no idea. Are we supposed to not talk about it just so that we can continue the narrative that anybody but Trump is the right move? I think we need to talk about it. I think, if I had the choice to vote, I would be voting for Joe Biden, because just it doesn't matter that, like, honestly, if these rape allegations turn out to continue to be credible, it's like I don't want to vote for a rapist. I really don't. Like, but
Well, that's
what
why
am I
you have
supposed to do?
that's why you have options now. So you don't
Well, yeah,
you
oh
have
yeah,
okay,
you got a
here I'm
lot of
going to tell you
options.
this. You have to vote for rapists. That's the rule. You have to vote for one.
In the
But what we're
States?
You
offering
do,
you yeah,
yes.
we're
That's the
offering you
thing.
two different choices.
Yeah,
We can offer you one that's like really really a rapist, or we can
yeah,
talk to one that's like he's like the store brand rapist.
Rape light.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
like the Dr. Flavor instead of Dr. Pepper of rapist.
yeah, it's really uncomfortable even to talk about it, and that's the position a lot of people are in, and a lot of people are pissed off about it, and rightfully so, right? Like, why do I have two rapists on the ballot? Or,
And
and
senile one.
allegedly, why are there allegedly two uh, senile rapists on the ballot? It
Hmm.
makes no sense.
This is what
So
the system produced.
this is what it produced. It's La La Land. It's too kooky for me. I can't even think about it. It's too crazy.
So
And
then,
so, yeah,
well, so there's polls out there showing that Biden is more popular than Trump in a lot of states and nationally overall. But we know that that doesn't, win you the election. Hillary Clinton won the overall vote. Coleman, what do you think of, I guess your thoughts on Biden, but then also like, yeah, how these issues are going to play into it? Because like, as Steve alluded to, it gets talked about a lot more critically of Biden, whereas Trump kind of seems to just skate through. Or are enough people upset with Trump in the right places that we're going to go with Biden no matter what?
I think what we've learned this week, especially with Joe Biden, is this guy just needs to shut the fuck up and let Trump lose this election on his own. Because like once you get Joe Biden in front of a microphone, and what did he say this week? It's like if you're supporting Trump over me, you're not black.
Yeah, he did say that
Like,
to
yeah,
one of the
like
most popular
what?
black radio hosts in the nation.
Like what are you thinking, you lunatic? Why
yeah,
would you say that? I just
really
don't
strange.
understand. And like this is the modern Democratic Party. Is like this is the candidate. Looking back, is like there was no other choice but Joe Biden for the Democratic Party in the U.S. because they're just so goddamn incompetent. But and then I saw they're vetting
Klobuchar, yeah.
Klobuchar to be the VP, and it's like why the fuck not? Let's just go for like the most boring VP candidate possible to pair with the most senile Democratic presidential nominee
Middle of the
possible.
road. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Democrats, it seems what they're kind of going for is kind of just run Trump against the Obama legacy.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of Obama in this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, for the Democrats' sake, you're going to see like a lot of video of Joe Biden smiling and waving at a camera, a good step away from a microphone.
With Obama
'Cause,
doing the talking for him.
yeah, I think we've hit a point in U.S. politics where it's like Bark's talking about how you don't want to like vote for these people. It's like the Trump presidency has gotten bad enough that voters in the states just have to just man up or people up. I shouldn't man up, shouldn't gender people, empower themselves to just vote for the clearly more competent option, and then we'll just hopefully Biden's a one-term president. And we can get someone like an actual race in 2024.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he has said that in some of his speeches and some of the stuff where he's like, I'm doing this because I feel that there's a dire need to get Trump out, and he believes he's the guy to do that at this time, and that he's like, we need to transition to a younger generation, and I want to be that transition. That's he said that he's on the record
Yeah.
saying those kind of things. Now, does that mean that he would run once and then allow the primaries to allow himself to get primaried, or step out of it? I don't know,
Oh,
but
that definitely means that he's going to set up a Hillary Clinton run in 2024. He's going to step to the side so they can run Hillary again.
well, this
Get the youth of the party out. Let's get
Yeah,
Hillary
just watch.
back.
It's like the next
yeah,
election is going to be Hillary Clinton running against like Eric Trump.
yeah.
And we're going to be like, what the fuck's going on?
We'll just replay that event again. Well, I think the thing to point out with this, though, as it goes into this is a point that I've heard made in American media that I follow, is that the strategy in the American elections now is turnout. You have to get enough people on your side to turn out. It's not about like, you know, getting fired up about what you want to see happen. It's like, can we suppress their turnout enough, or get people disinterested enough and have a fired up enough base? And the Republicans do this. They have it very well. They have their loyal base that will show up. They know will show up. And then it's, this is the Trump strategy, is just to make the other side be so unpalatable or disinterested or fed up that they just don't turn out. And I think that this might be where Biden has a step over Hillary because she was deeply unpopular, very, very unpopular. Biden is less so. He's kind of a more popular guy because he, has, for all his flaws as a candidate, people recognize him. They associate him with Obama. And like you said, Coleman, if we just keep him away from microphones, then maybe he can, maybe that's it. Maybe enough people, but you still have to then get people energized enough to turn out, or you have to get this slice of voters that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump to come back and vote Democrat. So there is that sliver there. We know what the Trump campaign is going to be. It's going to be, to disgust everyone about Biden and Hunter Biden and all these allegations and stuff. And this moves to one of the things that you brought up, Steve, in our chats before this, is this Obama gate. They're starting to float this, what appears to me to be a made-up conspiracy that Obama made some crime. Trump, was at a loss for words to even describe what it meant when he was asked what the crime was.
He wasn't at a loss of words. Like,
That's true.
what's the crime? And he's like, you know what he did.
Yeah. So it's not let's say not a loss of words, a loss of facts about what it was.
Today,
it's one of the craziest clips.
I'm going to start Barg-gate.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, it's like, you know what Barg did.
You know what it is.
He knows what he
did.
The biggest scandal our country's ever seen.
You just know.
Well, now you see that like some of the people around him and obviously the Fox Newses and stuff like that are starting to build the case, so it comes from the top where we just say, let's just say something, and then we'll start, people on the internet, conspiracy people and the Fox Newses and all this stuff will just start trying to pull these things together to, it was, they treated Michael Flynn poorly and, this and that. So they're trying to fill in the holes with some facts. I just, obviously it's going to work for his base, but does it work for, like I said, these swing voters that they so disliked Clinton that they voted Trump, and now will they go back? In some early primary polls that I was seeing during the primaries, a lot of those people, or a significant number of those people, were Bernie and Yang supporters. So I don't know if Biden can win those back. But Steve, you had some thoughts about Obamagate and how it was getting covered even, and like how that maybe that plays into the Trump Republican strategy of we're just going to disgust people enough about Biden that they won't show up, and his QAnon supporting, base is gonna jump in and carry the wave.
Yeah, I think I sure do. I've got a lot to say about Obamagate. So, I mean, first of all, in terms of the legitimacy of it, of course you're gonna have Fox News covering it, but then like there's lots of different media, especially in the States, and it's grown so much with YouTube, I think, particularly. But the gorilla in the room that everyone is just trying to kind of like hang off of, I think, is Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Is Joe Rogan not the most popular media kind of lifestyle, most listened to person in America? I'd be shocked if he wasn't, to be honest. I think he gets millions upon millions of viewers.
I think it's around probably 10 million views or downloads or something on his channels. He has 8.4 million YouTube subscribers, something like this. And there's an interesting point, I think, that can be, it's true, right? Like he drives some of this conversation. And I was having a conversation with my lovely wife, Teresa, about this. It would be interesting to know how diverse that crowd is, though. You know what I mean?
Oh,
what the demographics of that, because it's probably more diverse than the cable, the Fox News, who's watching Fox News, CNN, who's watching Fox News. But a guy like Rogan, I would imagine spans, he covers more of the middle ground or grabs people from both sides.
I think it's more, I think he does. I think he's a bit of a catch-all. And, you say however up to 10 million views or listens or whatever, downloads. Hannity is the most popular cable news guy. He's the most popular TV news person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's something like 3 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
and I think Tucker Carlson is in that range, and I think Rachel Maddow is in that range.
Mm-hmm. What
But
about
I think
Limbaugh and on the radio, on his independent radio show? He would probably be up there too.
maybe,
I
yeah.
don't know.
But
Yeah.
I think Rogan crushes them all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's a really fascinating thing. And I don't think we need to get into his Spotify deal that he just did. I don't really know enough about it, but he was in the news this week for the Spotify deal that he did. Anyway, so all this is to say, like, I'm a fan of Joe Rogan to a point. Like, I don't listen to every episode. I listen if he's got interesting guests, so I'll tune in. I think he's a guy who's like, hey, this is an interesting guy. He's clearly really good at what he does, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people see it as a skill, but I mean, it is a skill to be able to have these hours long conversations and bring really good stuff out of guests and to be engaged with people for that long and to have a really engaging talk program. I mean, he's unbelievable at it.
Mm-hmm.
So he drives narrative like big time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's others like him that drive kind of narrative in a smaller way. But so anyway, when Joe Rogan comes out and says, I can't vote for Joe Biden,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people really pick up on that, right? And it's a lot of Bernie supporters. I don't think the Bernie supporters are gonna make it to Joe Biden again this time around. Like they kind of didn't go for Clinton the first time. I don't think they're going to go for Biden the second time. Anyway, all this is to say that Joe Rogan has this incredible influence. And I heard him talking about Obamagate,
Mm-hmm.
and he's convinced that Obamagate is real because he saw YouTube videos about it. I'm not saying Joe Rogan's irresponsible, but it's like he's not an expert in these things, and he obviously knows how popular it is, how many people listen to him, how many people are taking his content in and being like, I believe anything Joe Rogan says. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm a firm believer that it's the consumer's responsibility to kind of intake the content and then to make informed decisions. I don't blame Joe Rogan at all.
Mm-hmm.
But to buy in on this Obamagate, which is just basically um, the the idea that Michael Flynn should not have been questioned by the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it boils down to. That he should not have been questioned by the FBI. That it's an FBI conspiracy to bring him in, question him, and then trip him up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The idea that the outgoing administration, led by Obama, needed some dirt, needed to trip up Trump, needed to push the Russia narrative. And we're going to do this by creating a false reason to interview uh, Michael Flynn and then get him to lie to us and admit to lying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but so this whole story is based on the fact that the FBI shouldn't be talking to him, but he lied to his own vice president about this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So if that doesn't create the condition for the FBI to talk to this guy, that's their job. Like I don't, there's nothing there. But then you can go into it. You can read the transcripts inside the White House. You can read about what Barack Obama was saying or what other people were saying. It's just like we don't know enough about the about Russia yet, or we don't have facts that connect Trump to Russia yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, that's why they're talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he should have the sophistication then when the FBI talks to him to not lie to the FBI, not lie to your vice president. And if you expect then that you're going to get away with that after you lied to one of those and then the other, I guess he did get away with it because we have a water carrying guy in Bill Barr,
Justice, yeah, the Attorney General, yeah,
who is just doing whatever. He's a political appointee, apparently, like he's not supposed to be, but he's acting that way. I think that's one of the most dangerous kind of things that's percolating right now in terms of Trump, because it seems like he's setting this up then to prosecute based on Obamagate.
Mm-hmm.
And if that stuff starts happening leading up to the election,
Yeah.
look out, because that's going to get crazy.
Yeah. And this is all like, yeah, to not like hammer out the details of what this whole thing is, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because, and like you alluded to it, their insistence, their evidence of wrongdoing is actually just evidence of them doing, people doing the job that they're supposed to do. Like they're pulling out emails saying like, look at, we got to make sure that this is done by the book, as somehow evidence that that's a nefarious statement, that there's like some plot to set him up. So people just saying, look at, we need to do our job correctly so as not to be, politically motivated or whatever, is now evidence that there's some political motivation. The whole unmasking thing is also the same thing. It's like the fact that they would need to unmask this source, which ends up being Michael Flynn and phone calls, means that there's something that needs to be investigated. They're looking at this phone call and saying, we need to investigate this because there's some, it looks like a shady deal. So in order to do that, we have to know who's on the other end of the phone. And then by doing that, it's then, evidence that there's some wrongdoing or some, so it's, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And yeah, you're right about, I agree with you about the Justice Department. It's like, if we start, and I wonder how far people will go along with this, but it seems like seems like a lot of people are willing to go along with it. You have a lot of senators and Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and a few others that are again pushing this out there. And I mean, Trump's base is very conspiratorial. I mean, just look at the QAnon thing that Trump alludes to all the time. He sends nods out to them in tweets and stuff. I've talked about QAnon a lot on this podcast about, it's just these people that think there's all this deep state conspiracy out there. It's all corrupt. There's pedophile rings. There's eating babies. There's all that stuff rolled in there. But Trump is the superhero of this conspiracy theory that's in there to clean up this mess. And to me, the Obamagate thing is he's clearly just throwing chum in the water for that, because it goes along with that. So anyway, he's riling up his base on this. It'll be interesting to see how far it goes. The thing that I am really interested in is the Joe Rogan thing. Like, how is he responsible? Is he, how much responsibility should he take in this? I'm in firm agreement with you, Steve, that the audience needs to be critical, but that's just not the way it works. And I'm also, like I said, I'll listen to Rogan when he has interesting people on, but I've actually started to tune out because it's to hear some of the stuff that he's talking about. And he's a known, like, his whole thing forever has been conspiracy theories. So this kind of thing he's like jumps into because that's he loves that shit. So he's kind of maybe not. I don't think he's doing it on purpose, but he's also then carrying the water for the Trump administration. Coleman, do you have any thoughts on the responsibility a guy like Rogan would have for this, or even just what the fuck is going on with the administration in using the Justice Department to go after political enemies?
Well, the Obamagate thing, first of all, I think it's just it's like a rebranding of the birther movement that Trump started that kind of brought us to this point. It's not particularly original. Nothing from this administration is particularly original. It's like their clear strategy is like this Obamagate thing will go on for a couple weeks, and then they'll come up with this new controversy, and they'll throw it out in the media, and no one will talk about it. It's like how they fired that one inspector general in the State Department that was looking into the Saudi Arabia arms deal.
Yeah,
and then
happened.
Yeah, and then a couple of days later, Trump in a press conference is like, "Oh, by the way, I'm taking this malaria medication to prevent COVID-19." So you think that had anything to do with the fact that he's actually taking it? It's like, no, they've created this machine that you just throw some new bullshit up in the air to cover up this increasingly fascist thing you just did. And if he is taking, I guarantee you, even if he says that they're probably telling him that he's getting those pills, and it's like a Flintstones vitamin or something like that.
Well, he is on he is on speed though, isn't he? Isn't that fairly well documented?
Well, I don't know if it's
Yeah, he has
documented, but
I don't know.
there's
There's
He
a
has
picture
the
allegations.
of him eating the taco bowl. You know what I'm talking
The
about in
picture of
his
him with
office?
the loads of Sudafed in his drawer, yeah.
Yeah, and his
yeah.
drawer's open, and you
When
can see
you look
the
in his eyes when he
bottles.
does
Yeah,
some of these
you
press
look at his
conferences, like those are the eyes of someone that just snorted something.
It's hopped up
And
like
you
oh,
just
totally.
know.
meatballs.
And he
Yeah.
also comes down from it. He also is that's when he starts slurring and like just saying things that are just like, oh my god, that's not you're not talking anymore, man. Close
Hmm.
your mouth.
Yeah.
Those aren't words anymore.
On
Uh,
and a touch on Rogan for a second. He lost a
yeah,
lot of credibility for me when he had Alex Jones on
Mhm.
because
yeah, I think
Alex
that was a
Jones
really
is
interesting episode. So
yeah
for
like
the reason of how polarizing it is.
Mhm.
yeah, and it's just like that's a guy that's like hurting the fabric of society by his existence. And
Doesn't
the
need
one
more
thing Rogan
airtime.
yeah, and the one thing Rogan does is he'll just have these guests on and then he can kind of walk away from responsibility of giving them and their ideas airtime by just saying it's like I'm just letting people get their ideas out or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think at some point when you become that big, even if you just started out as a comedy podcast, you have to take responsibility for what you're doing.
Mhm.
Because he
Mhm.
has
Yeah,
like some I don't listen to him a ton anymore, but he used to like he'd have like Republican senators on and stuff like that, people, and they'd say their ideas, and that's completely reasonable.
Mhm.
But then once you get into this conspiracy stuff, if you're just like letting that in for or if you're giving a platform to those people to speak, like you have to take some responsibility for the shitty things they say.
And push back or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and he doesn't push back at all. And he can say, and it's kind of like the Daily Show used to have this thing. And I love the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, but he would do this thing where he would not. He said he didn't have to take responsibility because he's a comedy show, but you're really not at that point.
Mhm. But
If
I would say
you're,
Jon Stewart was responsible in what he was doing. He was making
yeah,
jokes, yes, but he was
yeah,
also
but
yeah.
he was responsible. But every once in a while they'd say it's like I don't have to take responsibility for this because we're a comedy show.
Mhm.
And I think once you enter into political discourse like that, like, no, you can't hide behind that anymore. You can't hide behind that you're a podcast just giving someone the chance to speak. If
Mhm.
you're using your platform to give these people airtime, you're kind of responsible for what they say on it.
But now we're talking specifically about like his, and this is what this is again. I think people are getting upset with him about it is because there is this really polarized environment, and Trump is such a polarizing figure that if he, when Rogan was for Bernie and he had Bernie on and stuff, like people were like, yeah, that's great, that's because that's what you want, that's what they wanted, and now that he's potentially swaying people to not vote for Biden and providing airtime to this conspiracy theory. And I didn't hear the episode specifically that you're referring to, Steve, but if he himself is buying into it and talking about it in a way that's giving it credibility and stuff like that when he's clearly uninformed, and he does the thing too, don't get your news from me, I'm just a comedian, I'm just that. But then yeah, I think there has to be some responsibility there, because you could say that, but then if you turn around and speak as if you're an authority on something, and maybe we don't know his intention. Maybe he's in his mind he's not thinking I'm an authority on this. This Obamagate thing is really, I've looked into it and it's this and it's that. But that's how it comes across. So I don't know. I'm really
yeah,
torn on it. I'm really torn on it.
yeah. It's a tough. It's tough. I think so. He cited a YouTube video made by Jimmy Dore,
Mm-hmm.
who is a comedian slash political commentator, formerly of the Young Turks
Mm-hmm.
network, but now kind of has an independent YouTube thing. And so he cited this Jimmy Dore video, but Jimmy Dore is also a conspiracy. He trends towards that kind of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this guy very much or
I'm
not. I
aware of
don't know.
him, yeah, through Rogan.
So yeah, through Rogan and through the Young Turks.
Mm-hmm.
But so like this is the thing, right? So we have mainstream media like that people are largely unsatisfied with in a lot of ways, like the divide between, I don't know if you'd call, I'm going to call Fox mainstream media,
Yeah,
even though
sure.
because of their following and because it's on cable television. But then CNN is kind of like MSNBC, or kind of like the antithesis to Fox on the other side, but not to the same extreme, obviously. Um, People are looking for alternative sources. People aren't as satisfied with that anymore, right? So they turn to people like Rogan,
Because there's
right?
an
Because
authenticity there, I think that it comes across because it
and,
is
and
just
it's
a guy.
entertaining, yeah. And it's entertaining, and he talks about a wide variety of topics. He doesn't hammer out the same goddamn story all the time like Fox and CNN do.
Mhm.
So, and people look at more newsy type people. They look at like The Hill as a popular YouTube um, news program called The Rising.
Mhm.
Features Crystal Ball as a pundit on there, and Sagar. I don't know. I forget his last name, but so two people who are like known within the news circle.
Mhm.
These
Say
two people.
Crystal. Did you say Crystal Ball?
Yeah, her name is Crystal Ball. Yeah, real name. I don't know if it's real or not actually, but
Still like a gypsy or something?
yeah, it's definitely not a shtick. She doesn't come out like in
Oh,
a
I thought it was like a
Like Miss
character.
Cleo in the old
Yeah.
yeah, no, she's
I was like,
just
I'd watch that. I
yeah,
definitely. I'm gonna get most of my my news from fortune tellers now.
yeah. So, but I mean, this is a program that presents as real news, and I mean, they get it right a lot. Like I'll watch it from time to time, and they do get a lot of stuff right, and they do talk about a lot of things that don't necessarily get talked about.
Mhm.
One of the things they did a tremendous job on was the House bailout bills version 1, 2, and 3. You know, the Nancy Pelosi bills, and they were highly critical of those. Um, they covered Tara Reid, you know, in a way where, and their take is no one's talking about this,
Mhm.
right? Like Joe Biden went weeks and went through several interviews with respected reporters, and no one even asked him the
He
question
has addressed it though. Like
since then.
yeah.
But that was like 4 to 6 weeks into the story,
Sure. Yeah.
right? That was the first time he was even asked about it,
Mhm.
right? So
You could
they
make the
covered that.
argument though that they had to get the facts and that these things take time to investigate and stuff. But anyway, just saying.
No, I know, but I mean, you have to admit there's a double standard
Yeah, I see your point, but yeah.
there, because we're when someone makes an allegation like this, I'm not of the mindset that you automatically believe everyone who says they're a victim of this type of crime.
But you
Some
give the
people say, some
investigation the
people
same.
say you do, but you have to listen to them. You
Yeah.
have to take it
And you
seriously.
should
You
give the
have to.
investigation the same credibility that you would to any allegation.
Well, I mean, the comparison that's made a lot is the Christine Blasey Ford and the
Mhm.
who's the Supreme Court. What's that guy's name again?
Yeah.
Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh, yeah.
Kavanaugh. Yeah, Brett Kavanaugh. And so, I mean, that was obviously a huge story where people, the way they're covering this is they're taking runs at people who are looking at that case and who are just so staunchly opposed to Brett Kavanaugh as a person because of this allegation or as a judge, but they don't say a single thing about the allegation against Joe Biden, or they do. And actually, I did. I had an issue with how Andrew Yang talked about this on his podcast. I'm not sure if you listened to the Sam Harris episode, Brad, but
Not yet, not yeah.
so his take. Sam Harris asked him about it, and he didn't press him too hard, and I have a bit of an issue with that as well. But he asked him about it, and he said, "Listen, these types of things are they're patterns, right? They if you are a
Mm.
rapist
Mhm.
and you're
I
a
did hear that,
serial
yeah.
rapist, and so that's just a way in my mind to just dismiss it out of hand. I don't think that's, I mean, maybe he is a serial rapist. Maybe there's others who haven't come forward. That's just a really that's just kind of, and it goes to show that it's like, I think these are talking points that people are given in the in the Democratic Party to not to just shut the conversation down about it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can.
But
So
it's
anyway,
yeah.
I'll let you jump in a second there, Brett.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all these alternate media programs, right, that people are turning to, and the Young Turks is another one. I think they were more popular a few years ago, but they're still out there. They're still largely popular,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they have a great amount of influence. So I mean, it's important to get the news stories right. Um, and unfortunately, when it comes to Obamagate, a lot of these places are buying in, and I think it's going to really add flames to it. And the story I don't think is going away because I think uh, people are buying in. I think it's becoming a mainstream idea, and it's a total rewriting of history.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Barr said in an interview recently, history is, or when asked how history will look back at this move to exonerate Michael Flynn, and he said history is written by the victor,
Yeah.
which is a crazy thing to say
It's yeah.
by
It's not even
the
hiding
head
it.
of the Justice Department. Is just like, listen, I'm trying to rewrite history right now, so I hope it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's saying, and he is blatantly trying to do it, and some percentage of people are buying in, and Rogan's one of them,
Yeah.
and his 10 million listeners, maybe they are too. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult because it's like, how do you, even, and this is the Trump strategy, I think, they've, like Coleman said, this is what they do, is they throw these things out there and then move on to the next, and it's just distract, because it's, how do you cover something like this um, without giving it more credibility or oxygen, right? Like, obviously, as a journalist, you would want to go in and say, well, let's look at the allegations, let's look at the facts, and report those. However, in this case, you can do that. You look at the facts, and there's nothing there. And so this is the issue. And I think there's also an issue of, you have alternative media sources, but then also like alternative media personalities or something. There can be a distinction there, because independent journalists making a show and a following on YouTube, but still doing journalism, is different than comedians talking about politics, or even what we're doing here, right? Like, we're guys that are just talking about our opinions on it, right? And trying to bring in the facts. I'm not going to say that you guys haven't done your research, Coleman. We can see him frantically looking things up on the fly. No. But you know what I mean? So there's a difference there, right? Like, is it legitimate journalism being presented through a new platform like YouTube or Twitter, whatever it is, or is it like alternative media, in the sense that it's comedians presenting, their opinions? And in Rogan, it's that. Jon Stewart, obviously there was more, research in it. John Oliver is another one. So there's that kind of distinction too. And are these news sources, like, are they just falling into the same trap of, by reporting it, you're giving it more credibility, and this like sort of fake balance? Like, we have to treat these, in order to seem balanced. This is a critique of the mainstream media, a lot of the left mainstream media, that they get all the time, is like, in order to provide the semblance of balance so that we don't get criticized for being biased, we present the other side of this ridiculous claim as though it deserves the same treatment as, the obvious facts. You know what I mean? So, Coleman, let's start winding this down. But I don't know. That was just my, like I said, non-question, just throwing my thoughts out there, and I'll let you jump in. So I know I could just see that you've done all this typing, so you must have something to say.
I have an excellent recipe for lasagna. I've been looking up. Going to that. No, I think people talk about you have to put a personal spin on the news, where something like Obamagate, when you report it, you don't have to like give the other side time. You can just report on the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, well, President Trump says they trapped or tried to trap Michael Flynn into confessing to a crime he didn't commit, but they didn't.
End of
Yeah,
story.
Like,
but
that's
don't ignore it.
yeah.
Don't
It's like
pretend it
yeah,
doesn't
don't
exist.
ignore it. Just talk about it for what it is. Like this guy
Mhm.
is spewing bullshit, and you don't even have to say like President Trump is an idiot because he said this. Be like President Trump said this. This is why it's a lie.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to report on Trump, and it's hard to do because like like ratings are up all over the place because Trump does bring in ratings for news,
Yeah.
so or like news
But
channels.
the lie
But
also
like just
travels further than the correction ever does, you know?
yeah, and he just says this bullshit, and like just say like he said this bullshit today. This is why it's not true. It's gonna and
Or
now go to
debunked.
Tim with the weather. Like
Yeah, I think it needs to be debunked. I think if people want the most thorough debunking that I've heard on this comes from Preet Bharara, former district attorney for the Southern District of New York. Pretty high court, obviously, to be the district attorney of, and he's got a podcast,
Mhm.
and his
everyone
debunk.
has a podcast now, though.
Everyone's got a podcast. Well, I mean, and full disclosure, he was fired by the Trump administration early on.
But to be fair, everyone's been fired by the Trump
Everyone has.
administration.
Yeah, and to get out early, good for him. But his debunking of this myth that comes from a vantage point of
The law.
expertise
Yeah.
in the area, right,
Mhm.
and the law, and that's why like when you listen to Joe Rogan, or I'm just using him as a kind of a scapegoat now, or other people talk about this issue without uh, like a thorough reading of and knowledge of the laws that exist, you just can't even take them seriously, right? So if you want to learn about this, it's a pretty like nuanced thing. The laws around the FBI questioning and who they'll question and why they might question them, and then why is it illegal to lie to the FBI and all this type
Mhm.
of stuff. Ask talk to a prosecutor about
Yeah.
it,
Seems like that
from
would
the
be a
Southern
good source.
New York. Talk to legal experts. Don't listen to Rogan and believe what he has to say on it.
Mhm.
Listen to Rogan to enjoy it. Listen to for the funny stuff on it, for the content, but let's not be listening to him on this type of subject.
Mhm.
Well, and I think with the news sources, there's such this desire like you have to be balanced now, and it's like I don't think we have to give a a false truth the same amount of time on air as an actual truth or a fact.
Mhm.
It's like why do we have to like give any time at all to why Trump's claims have any merit? They don't. They never do. Like that's his entire shtick.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe that makes us left wing lunatics, but if a guy goes in front of a microphone and lies constantly, I don't see why we have to give like any credence to what he says at all.
Mhm.
And that
Are
doesn't
you
make you
in
an
front of a microphone right now, Coleman?
well, I'm lying right now. Don't give anything that I say any credence either.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
But also I'm just a simple amateur podcast comedian. I don't have to take any responsibility for anything that I say.
Well, I mean, I think this, I mean, let's really start wrapping this up here. I think part of this too is, yeah, this false balance. You see it with climate change stuff. You see it with anti-vax stuff, where it's like these other sides of these, arguments where there's overwhelming facts and scientific evidence on one side versus something some dum-dum posted on Twitter. It's bad. It points to some of the problems with media and why people are getting distrustful, or just they're losing their trust in the media. And then I think there's politicians like Trump that have learned to weaponize this, and people haven't figured out how to combat how to combat that. So yeah.
We need a vaccine for misinformation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. And what does that look like? I don't know, because the other playbook is to discredit experts. That's the other thing, is that we can't trust these experts because they're biased. They're shills of big pharma or whatever it is. So it's just this constant throwing mud in the water, as Steve Bannon puts it, flood the zone. And it doesn't matter what's real anymore. Nobody knows what the fuck is real anymore. And this was like, the promise of the internet was going to bring us all the information. And now it turns out, like most of the people that are putting information out don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So we got to really
Well, yeah, I
sift
think
through this mountain of information.
we were told like the internet's going to be this great place for everyone to get together and have lively debate and learn from one another. But all we did was we just sought out people that thought the same way that we do and just like dug in hard on our beliefs already.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's one thing. This could be the topic of the next episode. The whole other episode is, these.
No, the next topic is faking your own birth. We've decided that
But
already.
that's going to be a whole spin-off. That's got to be a whole spin-off podcast. We'll put that on another feed. So
Netflix is interested.
yeah. I hear they're giving everybody a show. So especially during these pandemic times, we didn't really even touch on the theory that Netflix created the pandemic to keep us all hooked on Netflix, which to me carries a lot of water.
Why do you think those 5G towers are going up?
That's right.
So people can watch high definition Netflix everywhere.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. Well, this has been a slice. A pleasure as always. Thanks for doing it. And yeah, we'll try and get a few more of these out on a more regular basis. So
thanks for having me, Brad.
Always. Coleman, thank you.
Yeah. Follow at Lionel Steele. He has some great photoshops.
Oh, plugging his Instagram.
Get the plug in. Got to get the plug in.
My apologies for not plugging it off the top. I got to say I'm a big fan of at Lionel Steele on Instagram. Loving
Great follow.
Yeah.
Great follow.
Stuff. People are loving what he does. Lionel knows what he's doing.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Again, please follow, rate, subscribe, do all that stuff. At 2Brad for you on Twitter and Instagram. Get in touch with the show. I should maybe clear up one thing from my opening rant. I allege that Kenny's brothers' treatment centers were shut down because of allegations of mistreatment. In fact, it was shut down because it was unlicensed, and then the allegations of mistreatment came out. If you disagreed with anything else that you heard, or you want to fact check me on it, get in touch at 2Brad for you. I'm here to be corrected. I'm here to discuss. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.